welcome to the Ranger's Respite. I'm Philip, and this is Drinking Geek. I'm back, and I'm making reviews again. You may notice that I'm not wearing my suit like I usually do, and that's because it's starting to get warm out, and I figured I could take a break from that. Ease back into making the show, see how it goes. And you may not remember, but last time, Patreon members and members of my local whiskey club voted on the review. The winner was Isaac Bowman Port Finished Bourbon. Now, this is sort of like the Angel's Envy in that it falls into sort of a strange subgroup where, by the letter of the law, I don't think it's technically speaking bourbon, which is why it's straight bourbon whiskey finished in port barrels instead of port barrel finished bourbon. I mean, it's one of those. There are very specific ways in which the wording has to be framed for the TTB to like it. Of course, the TTB isn't exactly a consistent organization. But anyway, unlike the Angel's Envy, this is bottled at 46% alcohol by volume, which is 92 proof, which means that it's a little bit more potent. It's also, and maybe it's because this bottle is just a little bit thicker, but it's also a much more sort of ruby color, and maybe it's this part that's making me feel that way. But I mean, it just seems to have a much more ruby color to the Angel's Envy sort of ambery color. I do like these bottles too. And yeah, this is of course a product of Virginia. Smells on the hands very like fruity and like berry heavy. But anyway, sorry, I got distracted. This is of course a product of Virginia. I believe that they get low lines, which is the stripping run product of the stripping run, shipped from Kentucky to the A. Smith Bowman facility in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where they do a spirit run to get this. It is then barreled and aged in Virginia, and this is interesting. It is straight bourbon, so it's more than 4 years old. Technically speaking, if it's more than 2 years old, it can be called straight bourbon. But in order to not have an age statement, it has to be more than 4 years old. And the finishing can't be counted in that number. So this is at least 4 years old before it goes into the port barrels for finishing. On the nose, it's very rich syrup port, which is a dark fruit, almost like a jammy smell if you cut the sweetness by about 50%. Backed up with a good layer of like sort of creme brulee, vanilla, sort of a little bit of a toffee note, some caramel, and some like dusty oakiness. It is a more complex nose than similar bourbons that I have had. In the mouth, it's a little bit spiky. Sort of starts out with a dry fruitiness that quickly blossoms into a very sort of sweet, rich, dark fruit, honey, and oak and vanilla. And the port influence is definitely one of the major flavor components that pops out, but it isn't as overwhelmingly um, port forward as the Angel's Envy. The Angel's Envy really drinks like port with some bourbon aftertaste. This is they're sitting much more abreast of each other in terms of how much influence they have over the flavor in the final product. Um, I actually like this quite a bit. This is more complex. There's more happening in the mouth when you drink it. Nice raisin, cinnamon, caramel, and oakiness. And a little bit of char in there. It's got some oiliness that clings to the back of the throat, which produces a nice, long, bittersweet finish. That's where the oak really comes out. And it's got like some oakiness, a little bit of char, some like raisiny sweetness, and a little bit of vanilla on the finish. Lasts moderately long. I really like this. I know I've said that a couple times, but I think this is a very good value. I think it is much more interesting than other similar whiskeys that I've tried. I think that part of that is the proof, because at 92 proof, you're getting more richness, more fullness of the spirit. Um, I just I like this stuff. Um, as the finish is coming to just its faintest whispers, as you're really dying down, you get more um, berry raisin sweetness that sort of pops up and then fades away. I really like this, both in terms of I think it's a delicious bourbon, and I think that it is a pretty good value. A similar, very well known port finish bourbon, as you know, is Angel's Envy. Angel's Envy is hard to find. When you do get it, if you can get it at MSRP, that's $50. I paid about that for this because I live in a control state. Um, but it's hard to find. This is a relatively limited bourbon. It's also bottled at 86.6 proof. That's 43.3% alcohol by volume. It is very sweet. It is more port forward than the Bowman Brothers. It's got a strange, like toasted marshmallow note that pops out on the back of the palate and into the finish. This is $39.99 before tax. I've seen it on the shelves fairly frequently. I don't think it's as limited as the Angel's Envy. It's bottled at a higher proof. It is a more interesting product, and it is a better balance of the bourbon flavors and the port flavors. So between the two, I absolutely say go for the Isaac Bowman. Now, I'm not just saying that because I have at least partially committed myself to primarily focusing on Virginia craft whiskeys this month, or this year rather, but also because I really do like it. I really do think that it is a great value, both at its price point and compared to similar bourbons. or independently at its price point and compared to similar bourbons. And that brings us to the second part of our show, where I talk about what's on the roster for next week's review. So to replace the Isaac Bowman, I have Bare Knuckle Straight Bourbon Whiskey, which is distilled and bottled by KO Distilling in Manassas, Virginia. Another Virginia product. And because I'm trying to cycle through things that aren't getting votes, in the last two polls, the whiskey with the fewest votes in the poll was Jim Beam Rye. So it's losing its position in the poll, and I've got to replace it. But I want to stretch out as long as I can the addition of Virginia products to the poll. So I've got to figure out something else to replace it. Luckily, I recently picked up something that is interesting, worth reviewing, and fits my interests, and that is the Van Winkle Family Reserve Rye. I'm a little bit excited about that because it's one of those sort of unicorn bottles that people do try very hard to find, and I got my hands on one. So we'll see if it's worth what I paid. Now, to vote in the poll, you have to be a member of my local whiskey club or a member of my Patreon. You can join my Patreon for $1 a month. There's a link in the description down below. We have lots of fun there. You get this content early, you get exclusive content, you get access to a Discord server where you can chat with me and members of my whiskey club, as well as my former co-host from my other channel. I might be making some Patreon exclusive gaming content, because that's definitely something that you want, but it's something that I'd like to try. If you would like to support my channel, but you don't like Patreon, or you don't feel like spending that much money, you can, for one lump sum, buy one of these adorable That's the Spirit pot still stickers at $3 a piece. I sell them on Etsy. There's a link in the description down below. They were designed by my friend Alyssa at Apricot Studios. I can't remember if I mentioned that. I'm out of practice because I've been on hiatus for so long. If you just want to, give me a little bit of a bump, help me out a little bit, I have a Ko-fi where you can donate a small amount. I'm currently saving up to get some lumber to replace this bar because I know I just built it, but I didn't do a very good job. It's wobbly. It's not very good. I'd like to expand my bar and my shelving, and I'd like your help in doing that. I think that's everything. Oh, right. There's a link in the description down below to the Whiskey Lodge Discord server, where I hang out with a bunch of other whiskey nerds and people who enjoy other forms of alcohol. It's a great inclusive environment for people who are interested in spirits in general, but specifically whiskey. It's a great group of people. Full disclosure, I am a moderator there. I think that I managed to get everything. So, until next time, stay happy, stay geeks, Sancha.